The morning was still, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. I never thought I'd be sitting here, pouring out my words to a screen, my fingers trembling as I typed. But there was no stopping it, no way to keep it inside anymore. The silence inside me had grown so thick, so suffocating, that the only way to release it was through these words. A confession, a truth, my truth. And even now, as I recount this, part of me wishes I could close my eyes and erase the memory of that day. But I can't. It all started in the kitchen. The clock had barely passed 7 a.m., and the sun was just beginning to stretch itself into the room, casting long, golden lines across the counters. The house was quiet, too quiet. I was still in my nightgown, messy from a restless night. The cramps had kept me awake for hours, twisting my body in a silent agony that wouldn't let me sleep. I had tossed and turned until 3 a.m. before the exhaustion finally took over and I just gave up. I threw aside the covers, and in my haze, I hadn't even bothered to put on any underwear. It was silly. Really, how I forgot something as simple as that. But when the pain was that unbearable, the little things like comfort didn't matter. I had spilled coffee. It was just a little, but the mess still startled me, pulling me out of my foggy thoughts. I grabbed a towel and knelt down to clean it up, my legs heavy, my body still aching. I was in no state to face the world, let alone anyone who might be around. But then, just as I was about to blot the last of the stain, I heard footsteps behind me. My breath caught in my throat, my entire body freezing. There was no mistaking who it was. Gabriel, my husband's younger brother. I didn't turn. I couldn't. My heart had already started pounding against my chest, and I felt a wave of heat flood over me. He was standing so close, I could feel the heat radiating from his body, even without touching him. I was still on the floor, kneeling in front of the mess I had made, with the towel in my hands, my entire body stiff and tense. But the worst part was that I didn't move. I didn't react. I couldn't. He didn't speak at first. His presence alone was enough to make the air between us shift, to make everything feel too heavy, too much. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The weight of it all pressed down on me in a way I couldn't explain. I didn't even know if I wanted him to leave or if I wanted him to stay. And then his fingers brushed my shoulder. It was so light, so delicate, that for a second I thought I had imagined it. But I hadn't. The soft touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I barely held onto the towel. His fingers didn't stop there. They slid down my arm, slow and deliberate, like he was trying to memorize the feel of me. I should have stood up. I should have told him to stop, to get away from me. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was frozen, caught in the moment, unable to escape. And when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw it in his eyes, the hunger. It wasn't about the coffee. It wasn't about anything except me. His gaze moved over my body, lingering on the curve of my back, the soft slope of my shoulders. I wanted to pull away, to shield myself from that look, but something inside me betrayed me. I didn't turn. I didn't move. I couldn't. Gabriel knelt behind me. The sound of his knees pressing into the cold tile was almost too loud in the stillness of the room. He was so close now, so close I could feel the heat of his chest brushing against my back. His hands rested lightly on my arms, not demanding anything but reaching. It was as if he was claiming something without ever saying it aloud. I felt it in the air between us, in the way his touch seemed to press against the skin of my soul. "Are you okay?" He whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I should have said no. I should have told him to leave, to stop. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded. It was a lie, but it was all I could do. And then his hands slid down, so slowly, so carefully, like he was waiting for some kind of sign, some kind of permission. The towel slipped from my fingers. My hands were trembling, but I couldn't find the strength to pick it back up. And then I felt his lips. They brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck, and I almost gasped. His touch was gentle, like he was savoring it, like he was trying to hold onto every second, every sensation. My breath caught, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop him. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't some momentary lapse in judgment. This was something deeper, something that had been building between us for far too long. And as I felt his mouth against my skin, his lips trailing lower, my body melted into him. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. His lips lingered just above the strap of my nightgown, the fabric slipping off my shoulder as he kissed me, his mouth following the curve of my skin. I felt exposed in ways I had never felt before, vulnerable, raw, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. But even then, even with all the guilt weighing down on me, I couldn't pull away. I couldn't bring myself to stop. I should have told him no. I should have screamed, but I didn't. I let him pull me closer, let him trace the edges of my vulnerability like he was marking it as his own. I couldn't find the strength to do anything but let it happen. I didn't want to stop it. Part of me didn't want to. And that's when I knew. My life had already begun to unravel, the threads pulling apart in ways I couldn't fix. I turned slowly, almost unwillingly, my body moving as if drawn by some invisible force. My knees scraped softly against the cold tiles beneath me, the sound almost too loud in the quiet of the room. I was still kneeling, still lost in the gravity of everything that had just unfolded. He stood before me, and our eyes locked, an unspoken exchange between us that felt more intimate than words ever could. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, his gaze fixed on me like I was some sort of puzzle, an answer he wasn't ready to find. In that moment, time seemed to stretch and collapse all at once. The space between us felt like an endless chasm, yet I was drawn closer, inch by inch, until the air itself seemed to hum with tension. My breath faltered in my chest, my heart hammering in my ears. I had never been this close to him, this close to everything I tried so hard to keep at bay. Then, without thinking, without even understanding what I was doing, I kissed him. Just once. Just long enough to know we had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The kiss was soft, tentative, but it was a promise. A promise I wasn't sure I wanted to keep, yet here I was, tangled in the consequences of it. I felt the hem of my dress riding higher as I shifted, the fabric clinging to my skin, as if it too was caught in the web of this moment. His fingers grazed my waist, a soft, almost intimate touch that sent a shiver through me. I whispered, my voice barely a breath, "This isn't okay." But I didn't pull away. Neither did he. The silence between us stretched thin, stretched so tight that I thought it might snap. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run, to get away from this madness before it consumed me completely. But I didn't. I couldn't. The days that followed were nothing more than a blur of muted moments and quiet breaths, the tension between us hanging heavy in the air like a storm waiting to break. Every time he passed me, I could feel it, feel the weight of the unspoken words, the things we both refused to acknowledge, but which lingered in the space between us, impossible to ignore. I told myself I wouldn't let it happen again, that I could walk away, that I could forget. But every day, I found myself making excuses, tiny justifications. I stood a little closer to him, lingering just a bit longer like I was testing the boundaries of something I knew was wrong, but couldn't resist. And every time, I told myself it would be the last time, but it never was. Then, one night, as I folded towels in the laundry room, my hands working mechanically, he brushed past me in the kitchen. It was a simple thing, his elbow grazing the curve of my waist. A moment that should have been fleeting, but it wasn't. It felt like it lasted hours, the electric pulse of his touch shooting through me. My breath caught in my throat, my body frozen in place. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. He muttered an apology, but there was no guilt in his voice. No remorse. There was something else there, something deeper, something I couldn't place, but it made my pulse race. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything else ceased to exist. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. 5 words. Only 5, but they were enough to undo me. I still feel your breath. I unfolded the note with trembling fingers, the paper soft against my skin. I pressed it to my chest, feeling the weight of it, the weight of everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. My heart ached in a way I couldn't explain. ached in a way it always did when I tried to deny the pull between us. I hated that I felt this way, hated that I still wanted him despite everything, despite knowing how wrong this was, how dangerous it was. But I didn't stop it. Not then. Not when he looked at me like that, with eyes full of longing and something else, something I couldn't understand. Not when his touch felt like the only thing that made me feel alive again. After so much time spent feeling numb, when he touched me like I was the only thing that mattered, I couldn't help but surrender to it. Maybe, just maybe for a brief, fleeting moment, I allowed myself to feel alive again, like there was something more to this life than the hollow ache I had grown so used to. But I knew, deep down, that this couldn't last. It couldn't end well. And yet, in that moment, I was powerless to stop it. Later, we stood in the doorway of the garage, a place that had always felt like an in-between space, not quite part of the house, not quite part of the world outside. There was an unfamiliar quiet in the air, and yet, it felt like the whole universe had paused. The evening air was warm, thick with the scent of old oil and fresh grass. And yet, there was an undeniable tension between us, palpable in the narrow space between our bodies. We were close enough to feel the heat of each other's skin, but neither of us made a move to close the gap. His words hung in the air, lingering like smoke, curling around me with a weight I hadn't expected. "I remember your face," he said, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. "You weren't afraid." I could still hear his words echoing in my mind, like they had taken on a life of their own. But the truth was, I hadn't been afraid of him. Not at that moment, not of what we were doing. That would have been too simple, too obvious. I wasn't afraid of the things happening right in front of me. No, the fear I felt was buried much deeper, hidden behind walls I'd spent years building. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of what he was drawing out of me, of what I had tried to forget, what I had been running from for so long. I had told myself for years that it was nothing, that the things I kept locked away inside, those fragments of pain, of longing, of regret, didn't matter. I had convinced myself that I was strong enough to push them down, to bury them deep enough where they couldn't hurt me. But now, in the quiet space between us, I could feel them bubbling to the surface, waiting for someone like him to unlock them. The truth was, I had been pretending for so long, pretending that the cracks in my heart weren't there, pretending that the things I had buried didn't shape me. I had convinced myself that if I just ignored them long enough, they would disappear. But they hadn't. They had only festered in the shadows, growing larger, waiting for the right moment to break free. And now here we were. His hand brushed my cheek, and in that moment, something in me shifted. It wasn't just the soft touch of his skin against mine, or the way his thumb traced the line of my jaw, but something deeper, something that had been dormant for so long, waiting to be seen. For the first time, I felt something real, something raw, something that wasn't buried beneath layers of deflection and self-protection. But the truth was, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to process it, how to make sense of the feelings that were suddenly rushing to the surface. I had spent so much of my life avoiding vulnerability, avoiding the kind of closeness that could shatter the walls I had built. And now, here it was in its purest form, and I was completely unprepared. I wanted to pull away, to shut it down, to put the walls back up where they belonged. But at the same time, I didn't, because there was a part of me, a part one had kept hidden for so long, that longed for it. Longed for him. Longed for the truth that I had spent years running from. And still, I didn't know how to face it. Didn't know how to let myself be vulnerable, to let myself feel. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I was fine, that I didn't need anyone, that I could stand alone. But now, standing there with him, I realized how hollow that it felt all along. I wasn't afraid, I said, my voice almost a whisper, and I could hear the uncertainty in it. The admission felt like it was being torn from me, a secret I had kept buried for too long. But now I don't know what to do with all of this. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't need to. His gaze was enough, searching, understanding, as if he could see into the deepest corners of my soul. I wanted to look away to avoid that gaze, but I couldn't. It was like he was pulling the truth out of me, piece by piece, and I was helpless to stop it. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. It wasn't uncomfortable. No, it was something else. It was a quiet understanding, a recognition of the unspoken things that lingered in the air. The things neither of us had said, but both knew all too well. His hand didn't leave my cheek, and I didn't pull away. In that moment, I realized that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things we need the most. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't running. The day it happened was ordinary, cloudy, breezy. Late afternoon. Ben had texted me he'd be home late. Gabriel was in the garage fixing the drawer rail on the pantry unit. I was upstairs reorganizing linens that didn't need reorganizing. I walked down to get something, anything. When I passed the garage, the door was slightly open. He was sitting on the floor, shirt off, sweat on his collarbone. His hands were covered in wood dust. His hair was messy. He looked young and completely real. He looked up and I paused. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, standing. "Just needed a break." He wiped his hands on a rag, then on his pants, then looked at me. "You smell like lavender." I laughed, nervous. "Laundry soap," I said. He nodded. "It's nice." We stood in the narrow doorway between the garage and kitchen, close enough that our arms would brush if either of us shifted even an inch. I didn't know what I was doing there, but I didn't walk away. "I keep trying not to remember," he said suddenly. "But I do." I looked at him. "Gabriel, I remember your knees on the floor," he said, voice lower now. "You're back. Your hands shaking and how you didn't move." I exhaled sharp like a warning, but he didn't back up. "I remember your face when you turned to me. You weren't afraid." I was ashamed. I said no. He whispered, "You were alive." He took a step forward, then another. Now he was right in front of me. I felt my breath stop. He raised his hand slow, almost questioning, then tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His knuckles skimmed my jaw. My chest rose sharply. His thumb brushed the hollow of my throat. I should have told him to stop, but I didn't because I didn't want to. He leaned in. His lips didn't land on mine. They hovered, waited. I tilted my head just a little, and that was all he needed. The kiss was nothing like the first one. This one was desperate. His hands gripped my waist, pulled me in. My arms slid up to his shoulders. I felt his skin, warm, tense, trembling under my palms. His breath faltered against my lips. My knees softened. The kiss deepened, but not in lust. In something tired, something that had waited too long to be touched. He backed me into the kitchen wall, gentle but certain. My hands were on his chest, then his stomach, then lower. And then I pulled back, breathing hard, fingers curling in his shirt, face hot, legs shaking. "I can't," I whispered. He nodded, but didn't step away. "I know." He rested his forehead against mine, and I felt it. His heart beat fast just like mine. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. I closed my eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't want this to mean everything, but it did. We didn't go upstairs. We didn't undress, but the heat between us didn't need that. His mouth was at my throat. My hand gripped the hem of his shirt like it anchored me. His thumb slid under my sleeve, brushing the curve of my shoulder. My legs weakened. I sank down, knees to the tile again. Not from surrender, not from shame, but because I didn't know how else to stay standing. And once again, he didn't stop me. We stayed like that for minutes, hours I don't remember. We didn't speak. We didn't ask. But when I finally stood, his hand lingered at my waist, holding me upright like I might fall. And maybe I already had. We didn't speak the rest of that day. Not when I passed him the towel after he washed his hands. Not when I left my empty mug next to his on the counter. Not even when we bumped shoulders turning the corner into the hallway. But the silence wasn't angry. It was intimate, too intimate, like we were both still inside it. That night, I stared at the ceiling again. Same fan, same room, different body. Everything about me felt heavier, like the kiss had lived in my chest longer than the actual moment. I could still feel the echo of his breath against my skin. We didn't sleep together, but something had still been undone. The next morning, I found the towel again, folded neatly, placed on the kitchen chair like someone had laundered it, dried it, and brought it back where it first witnessed everything, and that someone wasn't me. Gabriel wasn't in the kitchen, but his presence was. The cracked gray mug sat alone, filled halfway, still warm. I didn't drink mine. I just sat on the edge of the dining bench, robe tied, fingers clenched around the edge of the seat, like I was trying to hold still the version of myself that had let this happen. This kitchen still held our shape. He avoided me the rest of the day, stayed outside, worked on his truck, or just pretended to. But I saw his shadow in the window, saw the way he paced between tools, wiped sweat from his brow with his shirt still on, and I hated how much I was looking, counting his steps, memorizing his outlines. Wanting doesn't stop just because you've already wanted enough to regret it. That evening, I left the towel in the dryer purposefully as a test or a goodbye. It wasn't moved. But the next morning, I found the broken drawer in the hallway cabinet had been fixed. No note, no mention, just done. Like it was his way of saying, I still care, but I won't stay. Ben texted me later that night. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. Traffic's been rough. Love you. I stared at the words. Love you. I didn't reply. Not yet. I sat on the floor of the laundry room again. Same tile, same towel, same corner. And I cried. Not loud, not messy, just enough for the towel to matter again. The next morning, I came downstairs before dawn, and he was there, Gabriel, sitting on the floor of the kitchen this time, back against the pantry, eyes red. He didn't look surprised to see me. You're leaving? I said softly. He nodded. Ben's coming home. Another nod. I walked toward him. Bare feet, loose cotton pajama pants, oversized sweatshirt, no makeup, no perfume, no tension. Just fatigue and maybe quiet sorrow. He didn't stand up, just looked up at me from where he sat. I stood still for a moment, then stepped forward, knelt in front of him. Same spot, same floor. Our knees touched, and for the first time, he spoke without hesitation. I never meant to make you carry this. I looked at him. You didn't. I brought it with me. He reached forward, brushed his fingers along my jaw. Not possessive, just memorizing. I pulled something from behind me. The towel, folded it in half, then gently placed it in his lap. I can't keep this, I said, but I couldn't throw it away. His eyes welled. He held it like it was glass, like it was me. I leaned in, pressed my forehead to his, and whispered, I still don't regret it. He exhaled like I'd freed something inside him, but he didn't kiss me. He didn't move closer. And that made it harder, because sometimes the deepest pain isn't being rejected. It's being remembered the way you wanted, but still having to let go. I stood, left the kitchen, didn't turn back. But as I reached the stairs, I heard the softest sound, a body shifting, a knee hitting tile. And I knew he'd knelt too. Maybe not toward me, but toward the version of us that would never exist again. I reached for him like a lifeline, but maybe I wasn't drowning. Maybe I was dragging him under too, and still I do it again. Some people you touch without touching. Some kisses never stop. And some mornings you kneel not because you're weak, but because you're finally honest. I'm not proud of what I did, but for the first time in years, I felt something real. And maybe for a few seconds on that kitchen floor, I was